and welcome to this recorded briefing by the Jerusalem Press Club. I'm Jonathan Beck, Director of Content at the club. We are doing a briefing today with two representatives of the Democratic and Republican Party in the United States. Our first guest is Abe Katsman. He's a counsel to Republicans overseas Israel. Hello, Abe, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Can you tell me, I've been hearing a lot about a sort of trend of people who are saying, I'm a Democrat, many Jews are Democrats, but this is going to be the first time in my life I'm going to vote Republican. Now, the Biden administration early on in the war gave Israel a very warm hug with, a lot of arms shipments, etc. But as the war progressed, in Israel, people perceive the administration to be restrictive in shipping munitions and stuff like that. Can you tell me, from your perspective, do you think a potential Trump administration would not pressure Israel in a similar way?
Well, first of all, we've got an actual record of what a Trump administration would be like, and it would be the kind of administration that would sanction Iran, keep them against the ropes, keep Hezbollah in very difficult financial situations, and create the Abraham Accords. So that's a slightly different direction from slow walking arms shipments and withholding necessary weaponry that the Biden administration with Harris has been doing. And at the same time, there are voices within Harris's circle talking about reassessing the entire relationship with Israel. And who knows what that might mean. But her senior staff includes people like Maher Bitar, who is a former head of Students for Justice in Palestine. These are not going to be friendly people to Israel. And I think that is what has a lot of Jewish people very concerned. I mean, you saw the polling numbers recently among Israeli Jews of who they favor. And while Israelis were very happy, very thankful for Biden's appearance here in Israel right after October 7th, right now, according to the poll done by Channel 12 here, I believe it is 66% for Trump, 17% for Harris. That is probably going to be reflected, in fact, maybe even by a greater margin among Jews, among Americans voting from Israel.
Okay, do you think, I understand the poll you discussed is a poll that mentions the general view of the Israeli public, non-voting Americans. Do you think American politics play a part in the American voting habits of Israelis who are voting in the U.S.? Or is it purely about Israel?
Oh, well, it's certainly about all kinds of domestic matters. But I think one of the things historically you're practically able to graph this is that the more Jewishly connected Jewish Americans are, the more likely they are to vote Republican, and the more connected to Israel they are, the more likely they are to vote Republican. Now, there are Jews all over the spectrum, but I guarantee you that an awful lot of them have been feeling a lot more Jewish, maybe through no choice of their own, since October 7th last year. And that should mean a major, major swing in the Republican direction. I wish it were for other reasons, but I think that's the reality.
Okay, I want to ask you a question about Donald Trump's character. From the first term, let's say he's been known to be given to whims sometimes or changing his mind very quickly. Now, as an Israeli citizen, he said basically some things during the debate and in rallies that he held. He said, it's either a Trump administration or Israel is gone. As a citizen of this country, which has its own army and with all, giving due respect to the difficult blow the country suffered on October 7th, it comes across as like it's either me or the deluge. Do you actually share this kind of dystopian view that a Harris administration may even hasten like Israel's demise, or is it, election speak?
Well, I certainly think there's more than an element, more than a drop of hyperbole in there. But I think that the point that he's making is very legitimate. I mean, Israel is this is a very serious time for Israel. And this is not a period where you're just, where we're okay with candidates taking certain poses and virtue signaling. Israel is bleeding. Um, there have been the number of Israeli soldiers killed so far is the equivalent of about 30,000 American soldiers. That's, we're talking, that's 4 times the number that were killed in Iraq and Afghanistan combined. And this has only been in 1 year. Um, so I don't know that most people in America appreciate that, but I think that has really increased the resolve of the people here in Israel. They feel that if not their survival is on the line, that they better be very serious about their security. And when it comes to Israel's security, I don't think there is all that much of an argument in terms of which candidate is going to end up being better.
Okay, I have one last question. Trump has shown, despite being a Republican, a sort of continuation of let's call it like an isolationist approach that he inherited even from Obama, which is that America doesn't need to pay for the wars of other countries, doesn't need to like bankroll the security of other nations. So in the aspect of the munitions and the arms shipments, would the Trump administration not maybe endanger Israel for different reasons, perhaps, but in the same way of like delaying munitions shipments and aid?
No, I think that's a little bit of a misunderstanding of where he's coming from. He does not, you're right, he does not think that the US should unilaterally be funding NATO when NATO countries are capable of doing that themselves. But in the case of that, it doesn't mean that he bails out on allies, as I must say, to some degree, the Biden-Harris administration has been doing. I think people are very, very worried about that and worried about that trend continuing. In Trump's case, I mean, you take a look at the relationship that there has been between the US and Israel militaries. It's unbelievable what kind of coordination there is between there and between intelligence cooperation in terms of technology development. I mean, Israel probably provides more technological advancement to the US's own security than any other country. They've developed together things like the Arrow anti-missile system, and even Iron Dome. These have been joint ventures. There are plenty of others, and the last thing that a Trump administration is going to do is set Israel adrift all alone in this region. We saw, if anything, they'll make the region so much less hostile. I would expect probably, I'd say, a very good chance of some kind of peace agreement between the Saudis and Israel. I mean, now we take the Abraham Accords for granted, but this is astounding stuff. And the Biden and Harris administration has been rolling it backwards. If you remember, for a whole year, they wouldn't even use the term Abraham Accords. They just figured if Trump did it, it must be bad. And the truth is, I don't care who did it. I don't care what was said. I don't care what words are used. It was an incredible, incredible accomplishment, and makes this region's future that much brighter. I'm not worried about a couple of either isolationist comments or other kind of hyperbole. It's a campaign. Donald Trump is not shy. The guy can go on speaking for 3 hours. He's going to say certain things that, if you want to parse them a certain way, you can find something problematic no matter where you look, but look overall. I remember somebody making a comment about this once regarding someone else, but he said, in Judaism, in the laws of kashrut, we have the concept of batel b'shishim, that if something non-kosher drops into something kosher that is more than 60 times the volume of the non-kosher thing, it's still kosher. When you have someone like Donald Trump, who has the record that he has in terms of Israel, in terms of the Jewish community, in terms of expanding support for protections for Jewish students on campuses, and then he happens to make some inartful comment that you might want to take a certain way, batel b'shishim, nullified by the greater volume.
I understand. I said last question, but this is really my last questions. Can you tell me about Israelis that you have kind of won over to vote Republicans who were previously Democrats, at heart?
I'd like to take credit for winning them all over, but I don't think it's me. I think it's the situation. And I have come across so many people who, I'm not going to say they're necessarily, religiously Democratic, but they're people who regularly vote Democrat. And I've heard from one after another that they can't believe it. They're actually going to be voting Republican this year, or they'll say it's very complicated. I can't vote for Harris. They might leave the ballot blank. I'm not sure what's going to happen there, but there are a lot of people, formerly Democrats, people who had voted for Obama twice, people who voted for Hillary Clinton, people who voted for Biden, who are not going to be voting for Kamala Harris.
Understand. Okay. Thank you very much, Abe Katsman, for this briefing. I appreciate you for giving us your time.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Hello and welcome to the second part of the special briefing ahead of the U.S. elections that the Jerusalem Press Club is holding for its members. Our guest today is Ethan Kushner. He's the chairman of Democrats in Israel.
American Democrats.
American Democrats in Israel, thank you. And I want to ask Mr. Kushner about trending votes of absentee voters in the country, and maybe if there are any shifts in voting trends, etc. Hello, Mr. Kushner, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. So if you ask about voting trends here in Israel, I think that it is fair to say that historically, both Democrats and Republicans have been split here in Israel about 50-50 in their support for their respective parties. I think the Republicans will say that the number is skewed in their favor, but our experience over the last few election cycles has been that the Democrat and Republican vote is split straight down the middle in Israel.
Okay, before we get to the vote coming next week, I want to ask you about the beginning of the war. Back then, the board of directors of the Democrats in Israel, I'm not sure I get the title correctly, but they resigned collectively over what they termed the feeble response of the party to the October 7 massacre.
No, well, I'll actually set the record straight, so to speak. Up until the end of 2023, the organization which I am today and was also in the past chair of, we were part of Democrats Abroad. Now, Democrats Abroad is the international arm of the Democratic Party. The Democrats Abroad has chapters throughout the world, and as such, we were a chapter of Democrats Abroad, and we operated for many years under that umbrella. After 2023, after the massacre of October 7th took place, which also took the life of one of our board members' son, in Kibbutz Cholit, there was a backlash, as the world knows, there was a backlash of anti-Semitism and anti-Israel fervor that didn't escape also the rank and file of Democrats Abroad around the world. We had worked with the leadership of Democrats Abroad in order to squash those voices, and to really stop the anti-Israel and the anti-Jewish rhetoric that was taking place. And we did not feel that enough measures were being taken in order to literally protect us and our safety, our not physical safety, but I think you understand what I'm saying. And we also decided then as a collective board that it was going to be more effective for us as Americans living in Israel to align ourselves with a Jewish democratic organization that better fits our agenda as Israelis and as Americans. And in the end of 2023, we decided that our best move was then to resign from Democrats Abroad, and we reconstituted ourselves here at Israel as a not-for-profit called American Democrats in Israel. And we affiliated with a Jewish democratic organization, which is not part of the Democratic organization, the Democratic Party, but works fervently in order to get pro-Israel and pro-Jewish, I would say, representatives to both the House and the Senate, an organization called the Jewish Democratic Council of America. And we today are an affiliate of that organization as well. So I hope that sets the record straight.
Okay, I understand. Now, can you tell me, segueing from your question about this new organization, do the voters in Israel, you mentioned the connection to Jewish subject in Israel, are they motivated mainly by U.S.-Israel relations and how the potential administration that will be elected, either Trump or Harris, would relate to Israel, or are they concerned about domestic U.S. politics, like the border, the migration, the welfare, stuff like that?
Yeah, well, I think it's both, actually. I think that as Democrats and as Americans who grew up in the United States, obviously, and immigrated to Israel by choice, we're concerned about both. We are concerned, obviously, by the vision and the future of the United States of America, the country that we left, whenever. And we're also obviously concerned and desire to maintain that special bond and special relationship that exists between the State of Israel and the United States of America. But we're definitely, as Democrats, and as Jews, we're very much in line with the vision of the Democratic Party and with the values of the Democratic Party in the United States sets forward, and that is their approach to the Democratic Party approach towards women's rights, towards the LGBTQ rights, towards the environment, towards everything. I mean, those are Jewish values in the end, and they're very easy for us as Jewish voters, Jewish American voters, to connect to. That's number one. And obviously, as I mentioned in the previous question that you raised, was that we're obviously want to maintain that special bond that Israel has with the United States, and it really doesn't make a difference what administration. But we work very hard in order to ensure that that the Democratic Party maintains its strong support, as it has throughout the 70 plus years that Israel has been in existence, maintains that strong and an important relationship and bond.
Okay, I understand. What about the squad? Is the squad any reason for worry for Jewish voters? Do you think the squad is strong in the party? Is it going to diminish in power?
First of all, I don't think that the squad is are they a pesky bunch of people? Absolutely. And as I think many of your members know, that in recent months, 2 squad members were voted out of office. But they're a small minority, and this is an important question, because one of the prevailing messages that Israelis here are getting is that the Democratic Party is too progressive and equate progressive ideals with anti-Israel, and that is absolutely not the truth. Possessing progressive ideals as a politician does not automatically make you anti-Israel. And I think that you have the squad. They're a small bunch of people, and I think that it is important that there are about 5 of them, maybe 10, if you stretch that number, if you stretch that group to its farthest boundaries. And I think that one of the things that is important to understand and to realize is that there hasn't been one vote that had been taken in Congress, both in the House of Representatives and in the Senate, that has been anti-Israel. So if all of these supposed progressive representatives from the Democratic Party are anti-Israel, how is it that these votes in favor of, financial aid, military aid, etc., get passed almost unanimously? Explain that to me.
Okay, I see. So you say they're not gonna have a lot of influence.
I don't think they do, and I don't think they will. And I think that the efforts that are being made right now to defeat them, I mean, from within the Democratic Party. I'm not talking about a Republican opponent, but I'm talking about Democratic opponents that are standing up against them. It won't be possible in every district. It won't be possible with every candidate. But I think that in the end of the day, that is something that we're seeing as a trend that is taking place.
Okay, I understand. Now, going back, you mentioned before the formation of American Democrats in Israel and how you left Democrats abroad. Going to the party itself and not its chapters around the world, the Biden administration was very strongly pro-Israel in the beginning of the war, and as the war progressed, either because of the way Israel conducted it or for other reasons, there is a perception among Israelis, whether true or not, that it's become kind of a bear hug with restrictions, delays of sending munitions, etc. Can you tell me if you think there are Israeli Democratic voters who have changed their mind over the course of this year and are planning to vote Republican just because of the way the White House treated Netanyahu's government during the war?
Well, I'd be lying if I didn't say that there are those people who have chosen either not to vote for the office of president altogether, meaning they wouldn't vote neither for Kamala Harris or for Donald Trump, or in some extreme cases have actually shifted their vote to the Republican Party. But I think if I may just talk about, just for a second about your question, I think it is ludicrous to say here in Israel that the Biden administration has done anything but support Israel's right for existence, to defend itself. And that has come not only in the form of the unprecedented military aid signed by President Biden in the aftermath of the October 7th massacre, but also in its support and squashing anti-Semitism around the world, speaking in favor of Israel in every shape, way, or form. So I think that it is. I mean, I have my own opinion as to why this is happening and how it's being propagated here in Israel. But it is truly, I would like to say, I mean, I don't want to use this word, but it's anti-democratic party propaganda meant to ensure that one party wins this election, or at least wins the elections in the mind of the Israelis, whether they vote in the U.S. elections or not.
Okay. What about, let's say, the American universities, especially the Ivy League? I don't know if I'm correct to say, I think they're bastions of the upper scale American left, more or less, bastions of progressive ideals, etc. Can you say anything about the reaction of the administration to the campus protests that we've seen?
Look, I think that, in looking at the anti-Semitic backlash and the way that it manifested itself in not all, but some very high-profile academic institutions around the United States, is something that needs to be dealt with and talked about and addressed. I think that it is a lot deeper than just whether or not you had a bunch of encampments in Harvard or Columbia or Berkeley or the countless other universities where those encampments were being staged. I think that it has a lot to do with how academic institutions raise their money and where they raise their money from. And I also have, and it's also a matter of, whether or not these groups and this generation, this Gen Z generation, truly understands. I mean, I don't want to belittle their capability to process international relations, but truly understand and be able to process information in a way that makes sense. And I think that is something that we saw occur during these riots and demonstrations on campuses. I don't think it's the federal government's job to intervene in what's happening, but I think that Congress obviously held hearings, and we're very as Jews, as Israelis, we're definitely taken aback by some of the responses, from such as the ones we heard from the presidents of some of the Ivy League universities, Harvard, MIT, etc. And yeah, I think that requires, but that is also something that's endemic to American society in general, and something. It's a discussion. It's a much deeper rooted issue that will need to be addressed. And I don't think I think that it was sparked, so to speak, by the events of October 7th, or the Israeli response to October 7th, I would say. But it is not something. But it is something that really needs a much deeper examination, and not just in the context of what happened between in the days after, or Israel's response to October 7th, I would say.
Yes, indeed. There are pieces saying that Qatar is using soft power basically to infiltrate America through its universities. And
True.
personally, as an Israeli, I'm quite surprised about this after, the McCarthy era in the 50s, that this happens now so kind of peacefully and quietly. And we woke up on October 7th to discover that those Ivy League universities.
True. Absolutely. Sorry, I'm going to turn on some lights here. So, oops. Yeah,
Okay,
go
let
ahead.
me ask you a final question. Absentee voters in Israel, even if they vote in large numbers, are not very many. Do you think their vote is kind of a declarative statement about the opinions of US Jews, or can they actually swing one of the swing states and actually tilt the vote and send the electors one way or the other?
Well, it's not just Israel. I think that it is it's the total overseas absentee voter, as a block, and I think that we saw that in 2020. I think that the absentee votes, the overseas votes, really came into play in those swing states, and helped tip the balance, whether or not it was in Georgia, whether it was in Arizona or Nevada, or even Pennsylvania, for that matter. And I think that the overseas vote, the both parties, by the way, are recognizing how the overseas vote is becoming an extreme power, or differentiator, I would say, not power, but differentiator in especially in close elections. And the 2020 elections were close, and it looks like the 2024 elections are going to be even closer. And that's why a lot of scrutiny is being taken towards the overseas vote, whether it's in Israel or in some of the other countries, which even have larger voters, like Mexico, Canada, the UK, Germany, where there's a lot more American presence than here in Israel.
Okay, thank you for this. Following from this question, can you guess how the transition of power is going to look this time, regardless of the winner?
I hope that there won't be a transition of power.
Understand. Okay, and finally, you're obviously, as you know, a representative of the Democrats, are quite certain that a Harris administration will be friendly to Israel.
Absolutely. I don't see anything in her past record. I don't see anything in her current statements that would indicate anything different.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Mr.
My
Kushner, for
pleasure.
the briefing. I appreciate you giving us a bit of time.
My pleasure.
Now for something completely different.
Do you have a message for all the
The next year is going to be better than this year. Don't forget to vote.
We did today. I see someone was
So what we've just seen is an Instagram story, as you all recognized, and it had a slide on it saying 70% for Trump, 30 for Kamala Harris. Now with us for this section is a special guest, Noah Barzani, who runs the Instagram account, Olim in Tel Aviv. It's got 60,000 followers. And the results in the story you've seen is from a poll that Noah conducted. Of course, it's an unofficial poll with margins of error, etc., but it still gives a decent picture and included 1,200 votes. Hello, Noah, and thank you for joining us.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So, can you tell me the results that I see on your poll are again taking the fact that it's not scientific statistically are still kind of staggering. I mean, this is not about decimals of percentages. This is a very clear landslide win for Trump.
Right. So my Instagram page and community is basically for Olim Chadashim. It's Jews who have made Aliyah to Israel. A lot of them are Americans, not only Americans, but a lot of them are Americans. And it was very hard to hear in that video, but basically I was with a friend and he was like, don't forget to go vote. And then I was like, okay, let's put a poll in there. It's very hard to hear, but yeah, the results were 70 Trump, 30 Kamala. Listen, I don't know how surprising it is. Like, I would expect most of them to vote Republican this round, but based on what I'm hearing and based on what I'm seeing in the news and based on the general sentiment, that's what I would also expect to see. And that's what we're seeing.
Would you say that this is kind of representative of the political makeup of the people who come to Israel as new immigrants, or is this as a result of the effects of the war and specifically, the administration, the White House's relation to the Israeli government during the war?
I think definitely to some extent there is a relation to what's happening. I had a few friends who I personally know who told me they usually vote Democrat, and for the first time in their lives, they're not, because of Israel and because of the war and because of what's been going on. So I definitely think it comes to play in these elections.
Okay, thank you for this. Now, you've been an Ola Chadasha, an immigrant in this country for 4 years. In our conversation before the Zoom, you said you think people who come to Israel become single-issue voters. Would you characterize, first of all, yourself today and the people you've met as single-issue voters? Is Israel really the one thing that is important, or are they, concerned about immigration at the border and general issues that are related to the elections in America?
I can speak on behalf of myself. I am not a single issue voter. I definitely have priorities on what I'm voting for. But I'm from Texas and there are other things that come into play when I vote. So for me, I'm not, but I do have my priorities on what falls on priority list for voting, and Israel is definitely one of them. I have heard from other people that they are becoming single issue voters. From I could pick up 4 off the top of my hand, but to tell you that everyone, I can't say that. I don't think that's the case.
Okay, can you tell me in general, from your perspective, do you think young immigrants to this country would tend to cast absentee ballots? Because I know the percentage of Americans casting absentee ballots is small, and I would think maybe young people are care less about those things. So would you say it's different?
I think it's from everyone I've talked to, it's been very tough for people to complete an absentee registration. Very, very tough. That's something definitely that the next election season I want to help my community and get more involved in, is help people do this vote. I was very lucky because I filled everything out when I was in Texas right now, home for the holidays, and got that done. And I made calls to my county while being in the state and all that. But I've talked to at least 10 people who were trying to register to vote, and they didn't realize they missed the deadline, and they didn't realize they had to get something mailed in by a certain time, and they just totally missed it, and now we're just not dealing with it. So yeah, it's unfortunate because they do want to vote and they just can't now.
Understand. Okay, I appreciate this. This would, I guess, necessitate some kind of change in the entire American system, because also in the US you need to register to vote, unlike in Israel. By the way, are you an Israeli voter as well?
I am an Israeli citizen. I've not participated in voting yet.
I understand. Okay, I appreciate your time, Noah. Thank you very much for these
Thank you.
points. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.